Welcome to Internet Safety, hosted by Donna Rice-Hughes. Over the next hour, you'll learn practical and crucial tips on how to keep your loved ones safe in the digital world. Now, here is Donna.
Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Rice-Hughes, and I'm the president of Enough is Enough. And since 1994, our focus has been making the internet safer for children and families and fighting to prevent the online exploitation of our children. And today's topic on this broadcast, we're going to be talking about how to protect our kids in a sexually toxic, pornified culture. And I'm very excited because we've got a guest that I've known for a very long time. His name is Gene McConnell. And in the internet age, there are some veterans. I'm one of them, and so is Gene McConnell. So Gene, who is the founder of Authentic Relationships International. His programs, Pursuing the Hidden Heart and the Power of Porn, broke new ground by demonstrating the link between the root causes of shame, broken relationships, and the consumption of sexual images. He's a battle-worn warrior. I think, Gene, you've been at this for about 30 years, as have I. Share us a little bit about how you got into this, why this has been such a lifelong mission of yours, and your own story, because that's really where it all started, didn't it?
Yes. Well, thank you for allowing me to be on with you, Donna. It's good to see you. And yeah, we've been at this a long time. In fact, I'm afraid to even say how long. It might admit to how old I might be here. But I got into this battle for personal reasons because, I was a consumer, very young age. My exposure to porn was at 12, my first exposure. And that image that I saw at one of the elders in our church had a stash in his backyard shed. And when I was exposed to that image, that first magazine, it was like a drug injected in my veins. And literally, a young mind, your mind is like fresh clay. Think about innocence being your first experience of something, first experience seeing a giraffe, first experience riding a roller coaster, first experience having a sexual encounter or a sexual experience with pornography. That it had a profound imprint in my mind and profoundly wounded my ability to see sex and women in a healthy light. And so that from that point of that first exposure, I became, now I would be able to say addicted. Then I didn't know that, I didn't have that language, but I literally kept going back to it again and again and again. And it was mood altering. So in that, the first experience was shame and pleasure in the same experience. So shame meaning I can't tell anybody about what I'm seeing because I know what I'm seeing is not healthy. I know it's not good. But pleasure, excitement, arousal, sex charge images are, inject a natural drug within our brain, epinephrine, and many other things go on in our brain and heart and mind when we view a sex charge image. And so, 12 years old, here I am trying to pursue material that is not healthy for any young mind to learn and grow and to consume. And so for 12 to 16, I was a major consumer, and it had a profound impact on how I saw women, how I treated women, and even in terms of my fantasy world, like what I wanted sexually. So I think that children especially are, regardless of what people think about what adults do and what they consume and what they look at, children should never have their hands on, should not be exposed to pornography. Many studies demonstrate that early exposure to pornography is the same as sexual abuse. It has the same impact because it wounds the ability to see things in a healthy light. So I can say for sure as a young adult that pornography profoundly impacted me. The thing that was probably the most impactful for me was that my sister was like my best friend, and we did everything together. Or she was 2 years younger, and I came across a magazine in a ditch that was thrown out by a car, and that magazine was uh, titled something like "Playing with Little Sis," and so not only did it encourage brother-sister relationship, but it set many scenarios up, many stories about how to set those up. And so at 16, I had a sexual encounter with my 14-year-old sister based on the material that I had read, and the profound impact on my heart because I knew this was wrong. Here's somebody that I really cared about. Here's somebody that I was special to me, and to cross that line was huge for me. And I swore right then that I was never going to do it again. I'm never going to consume, never going to, I'm done with it. I'm going to walk away from it. And for many years I did, but it came back again in my world. And when it did, I was going through a divorce and struggles in my marriage, and I started going to prostitutes, massage parlors, escort services, the porn shops. All of that started right back up as if I had never stopped.
Right.
And that had a huge impact on me. And I look back at that and think that first exposure to pornography at a young age created this appetite for
Right.
unhealthy relationships, unhealthy treatment of women, unhealthy perspective of who women were. And so it had a profound impact.
Well, thanks for sharing your story. It's a sad story and it's tragic in so many ways, but unfortunately, it's not uncommon.
Right.
Especially in today's world. You and I both have our stories. I was also exposed at a young age, about 6 years old, and we're certainly not going to go into my story. But I agree, those images cannot be erased, and it does sexualize young people, especially if it's their first exposure to sex. And but we're going to be focused here on what's happening now, because the content that is available online that any child has free and easy access to is hardcore, it is extreme, and it is depravity. This type of content used to be black marketed. We call this, Gene, when you and I started before the internet, the kind of the black market content that you couldn't even find, or an adult couldn't find in a XXX rated bookstore unless they went to the really back area and asked for it. Now this is mainstream. Common themes depict teen rape, incest, which you talked about, and about 90% of it depicts some type of violence against a woman, against a female. And so this is actually shaping the template of what our kids are viewing as normal sex and grooming them to desire what they're actually seeing and becoming aroused in this type of content, and it's everywhere. It certainly robs children of their innocence. We know, you mentioned a little bit about the brain chemistry, that this material will rewire the brain, which is why it's so difficult. It's a very hard addiction to break, because even if you remove the content, someone stops looking at it and being a consumer, you can go right back into your brain memory and pull it right back up off the hard drive of your brain. So this is a real thing. And there are studies now that show that this is literally what is happening. Just some ideas on some data points, and then we're going to get right to how do you protect your kids and how do you prevent this, which is really what parents want to hear. They're like, okay, I get it. First, of youth who are viewing this content, 58% are under the age of 14. I always say, and I've been saying this for a very long time now, since the advent of the internet, it's not a matter of if your child is going to come across this, boy or girl, it's a matter of when. So how do we deal with this? 50% of kids polled said that they're watching violent pornography. We know that exposure to any of this content increases a child's odds of being sexually exploited by a factor of 3. And then there's the whole addiction model, becoming exposed becoming desensitized, objectifying those in the content, and then sometimes even leads to acting out. And of course, there is a pandemic now of kids sexting, actually taking images of themselves or videos and sharing them with others online. To me, this is the perfect scenario that really depicts acting out, right? They are imitating what they're seeing. They're, recording themselves, and they're putting themselves out there, putting them at great risk for a trafficker or a predator. So I want to talk a little bit about the supply and the demand side of this. Gene, we've focused for so long on the supply. We know this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's growing, growing, growing. Unfortunately, the laws in the United States of America that the Supreme Court said that this material is not protected speech. We call it obscenity under the law, not for adults or for kids. Those laws have not been enforced since George W. Bush was president, which is why there is such an abundance of this. We're trying to change that at Enough is Enough, get those laws enforced. But let's talk about the supply side. This is something that you've been focused on for quite some time, as have we. How do we stop the demand? What is driving men and women and boys and girls? This isn't just a guy thing anymore. Mm-hmm. To be drawn not just to pornography, but to all of the sexual content, everything that's going out there that's so easily available online.
Donna, it's a really important question, and if we address just the legislative side and the supply side, as long as there's a demand, there's an appetite for the material, there will always be material. And so it's not that we stop the demand or the dealing with the supply, because we have to have laws in place, and we have to have strong, not only strong laws, but law enforcement to enforce those laws, and judicial process that would actually put teeth to what those people being arrested and all that. But the thing that we've been missing is this demand, like the why. Why do men and women consume? Because as long as there's an appetite, it's always going to be. And so to ask the why, you have to kind of step back and look at what is driving that. And I believe this is a relational issue. I believe that our relationships are distant. Our relationships are superficial. They're not in any kind of depth. And depth meaning that people see our real struggles. I see our real messes. And then, so intimacy is into me see. So you see who I really am, and you love me anyhow. And for the lack of intimacy, which means not sex at all, has everything to do with connection. And that, so when someone goes through like abuse, or they go through some kind of mistreatment or loss, or in many ways, maybe they're exposed to stuff that they're ashamed to talk about, like, oh my gosh, if I share what I just consumed or what I just saw, people will reject me or push me away. So what we do is we put these barriers up, and we don't let people in. And so then we live life with barriers, like I perform, I'm professional, I do good things, but you really don't know what's going on the inside. And so to compensate for the lack of connection, well, sex is freely open. I don't have to risk. I don't have to be vulnerable. I don't have to be deep with anybody. I can just grab what I think I want. And this woman's open, she's available, and there's no risk, there's no emotional damage in it, we think. And I don't have to trust. I don't, it's what I consider to be an emotional safe. People think that it's emotionally safe. So it's the way of replacing intimacy. So it's a fast food of intimacy, only it has far more toxins than we can all imagine. So right. If we're going to answer this problem, we got to help people dig in and work on what keeps them from having deep relationships, because the depth of relationship actually helps people heal and change and feel alive and dream. And when we don't have relationship, then we make really poor choices and we use things. So like pornography is one of those venues of drugs is another, alcohol is another, where we're the lack of connection, we're going to something to meet
Right.
that connection. And so porn is a symptom. It's not the problem, it's a symptom of the problem. And so
That's a good
if we're
point.
going to help people change, we got to get to the whys. And that's a really important thing when we look at parents. Like, how do you help your kids navigate the world we're in? Because you can't, I mean, you and I remember pornography used to only be available behind the counter. And
Mhm.
you had to pay, you had to put an ID up and you had to pay for it. And so when now the pornography is literally everywhere, it's in our advertisements, it's in our television, it's in our movies, it's in our music, it's in every aspect of our life. And so it's not an issue whether kids are going to get exposed to it. It's how do they handle it? How do they confront that? Do they have the tools to navigate a very sexually toxic world? And so to do that, that means that parents need to be available to talk, to actually have real conversations that parents can make it safe for them to share things that are risky, that without fearing of being punished or rejected. And that kids can trust their parents won't do them harm when they share these risky things. So that's the foundation for starting to have a conversation with your kids.
Right. And don't you think now, kids are getting exposed to all types of sexual content at a very young age?
Yes.
It used to be your parents needed to have the talk, before puberty, right? Now, I believe it should be much younger. And I really want to
Much.
explore this with you because we know that, for instance, law enforcement who are looking for counterfeit currency, they study the real thing so they can recognize the counterfeit. So I believe that, in age appropriate ways, that parents can start to talk about what is healthy relationship. What does that look like? How should a boy treat a girl? And how should a girl treat a boy? One of the things that we've been talking about for years that we're finding in speaking to preteen girls is that boys we're expecting them to be what we call porn ready and to be acting out with them what the boys were seeing in pornography. And the girls also were acting out of what they thought was expected of them. So let's back up here just a little bit to grade school. What are some conversation starters? What are some ways that parents can really start to teach their young people what is good and what is healthy, and that there is dangerous, toxic information out there? We call them pornographic lies. But and how to recognize this and not gravitate towards that because it's
Right.
designed to draw us in, right? That's
Right.
why it's considered the drug of the new millennium. So let's go back to grade school, Gene. Give us some thoughts.
I think it's such an important conversation to have because the number one thing that well, there are two aspects. Knowing that there's a relational health issue going on, right? So I just said that you need to build a healthy relationship with your kids so that they can talk to you about anything and that they're not going to get punished. So you set a foundation for if they get exposed to porn, they can come talk to you. That if a boy makes comments about to them and makes them feel uncomfortable, they can come talk to them. Or they come across something on the internet, they can come talk to the parents so that there's a foundation of like we can talk. and secondly is that it's the mental side, it's the brain side, it's the perspective side, and that's one of the things we don't realize is the damage done to the perspective, like how you see women, how you see yourself, how you see men, all that. So as a little child, being able to have conversations about just basic understandings of healthy boundaries, like they're, like using one like anybody that touches parts that your underwear covers is a no-no. That's special. That's meant for later in life with someone who loves and cherishes you. You don't have to get into any real depth about it. Just being able to set some basic foundational information around boundaries. And then also the idea that if you come across thing that makes you feel yucky when you see it, but it draws you, and let's talk about it. Let me talk to you about what it does. One of the things that I was able to do very early on is have conversation about, hey, when I was a little boy, I was exposed and it had a profound impact on me. And you share based upon age. You don't do the full story, and you don't have to. You share bits and pieces that will help them see, hey, I've been there, I've struggled, this impacted me. And as a woman, you have the opportunity to say, this is how I feel when someone is consuming porn. It doesn't feel good to me. It feels like they're not respecting me. They're not treating me. Can you imagine if that was grandma or that was your mom in that picture? How would you feel? And to be able to help them connect the humanity side to the story so that
That's right.
Right. So they make it human. But I think being personal, where you're sharing story and talking, and then having basic sex education, where you're talking about healthy, not healthy, like you said, interaction with one another, and how we treat each other, so that they can see there's a foundational line that says this is healthy, and if there's any questions about that, you're free to come talk. So we've had that happen so many times where because we do retreats and kids are coming to us and saying, well, I didn't realize that was bad. I didn't feel good. And here's what has happened. And it's like, so when they feel safe, they'll talk. So it's making a safe environment and then helping change the perspective, or at least set a tone for what is healthy, so they can see that's not healthy what you're doing, or no, that's not good, or that is healthy. And for them to be drawn to sex, of course they're going to be drawn to it. Don't shame them about it.
That's right.
Talk to them about it. That shame is when you attach the problem to their identity. And so when learning to have a conversation without shame is separating out, this is a kid I love, this is a kid who's special, this person is unique and gifted and has an amazing heart and is talented and all that, and this is an issue that is confronting them. You separate the issue from the child, and you can talk about the issue and not destroy the child, so that you separate the conversation. So you can attack the issue, but you don't attack the child. But as soon as we do that, come down on them, or we shame them, or we belittle them, or we embarrass them, then we're shutting them down, and we'll never get any conversation from them. And all we're going to see is the fruit of their consumption, where they get in trouble, they get, school, the way they treat someone, But if you can open that door for conversation early, you'll go a long ways in helping them.
And what we say in all the teaching that I do, it's, sometimes I like to just make things really simple. Don't blame or shame.
Yeah.
All right. Because there is already self-blame involved.
Right.
There is already shame involved. It's the last thing you want to do, because they're feeling it. They're drawn, and yet they feel guilty, and then they're embarrassed. I'm going to get in trouble. Mom's going to take my computer away, and I can't talk about this. And I can't even talk about why I'm drawn to it. Well, what I would say to a young person is, of course you're drawn to it. That's the whole goal of the porn industry, is to draw in a consumer, because they know the content is addictive. If they can hook kids young, and they are purposefully let me tell you this, parents, they are purposefully going after your kids. Okay.
Right.
They know if they get them young, they will hopefully have an ongoing consumer for life. So you're so right. Having this atmosphere of trust, nothing is off limits for you to come and talk to me about. And we're going to work with you and we're going to help you because you're going to be seeing these things. And kids are sharing this stuff all the time on their smartphones, back and forth with each other and everything. So help them process, which is really just so important. I want to get to warning signs. And
Okay.
then we're going to talk about prevention, but there are warning signs, aren't there? Um, do you want to go over a couple real quick? And I may add to that, and we're going to get then right into some prevention.
Well, whether they're very embarrassed about their own body, they become negative towards certain parts of themselves, or boy has it, or a young man or a young girl has an obsession about sexual conversation or language that they would normally not be exposed to. All of a sudden, they're talking in certain ways that would depict they're getting some kind of toxic input somewhere, whether that's a pornography magazine or whether that's their friends talking, which is actually just as damaging. But there's shame around that their body or the whole idea, or they're using language, or there's activity that they're starting
Mhm.
to do, right? That you're noticing that concerns you, and a lot of times the appetite, they stop eating, or they're not taking good care of themselves, and usually that's a sign of sexual abuse stuff when they start really having like real serious pull in or acting out, one of the other. They're really withdrawing or acting out.
Promiscuity at an early
Right.
age, curiosity, unusual curiosity about
Right.
sex and sexual
Right.
topics at an age inappropriate way. I can
Right.
remember as a second grader, I started asking my mom questions,
Yeah.
and I should have had no idea at that point
Right.
because this content robs your innocence and it
Sure.
sexualizes you. And I love what you said in the beginning. Exposing children to pornography is a form of sex abuse. And so we want to prevent that as best we can and help prepare our kids for what they're getting bombarded with, especially as they get older and older, as they have more freedom online, as they have more access online. So I think another thing that we can talk about, and just recently in the news, um, you know, especially older grade schooler or preteen or even a teen, they are following the news, and you can bring in current headlines and use
Hmm.
those as conversation starters. I mean, just this week we've had the Nickelodeon story break about child sex abuse within this whole network. And there's a documentary out there called Quiet on the Set that was just released. There's the rapper P. Diddy story. And your kids may be hearing about this stuff at school. There was the Taylor Swift AI, artificial intelligence issue. So when we can bring in things that they're already interested in and then try to pivot into areas that we want to talk to them about, what did you think of that? Have you ever been exposed to anything like this? Has anyone ever approached you? Those kinds of things. Those are really good ways to very comfortably have conversations. So a parent finds out that their child is struggling. All right. I hear this quite a bit. I'm sure you do. They already have an addiction at
Right.
10,
Right.
11,
Right.
12. What do they do?
Well, I think the number one thing that is finding a good, healthy counselor, and unfortunately, there's a ton of counseling out there right now that are not healthy, and I would think wouldn't take that my dog for their counseling, much less my child. So you have to be careful about who you're sending them to, but a good child psychologist, especially a play or art therapist, because kids talk in pictures. And so they have a hard time. They don't have the language for what's happening to them. They don't have the adult language to explain in words what's taking place, but they can draw and they can actually paint or they can actually play with clay. There's a lot of ways to help kids talk. And so it isn't necessarily that the parent is unsafe. It could be that you're the safest parent in the world, but kids don't know how to articulate what's just happened to them. And so having someone who's skilled that can help them have conversation. And then, having the most important thing that never gets looked at, and this is so important, is to have that child have a good sense of themselves. Like, because the ones that are vulnerable to this, that actually, when they're exposed to it, they get hooked on it and they can't get away from it, are the ones that don't have a very good self-image of them. So one of the things that parents can do proactively is build good esteem in their child. That means allow their voice to be heard, to learn how to be able to speak up and how to be respectful in speaking up, but to speak up and not to swallow your voice, that your identity in terms of that you're important, that you're valuable, that you matter, and you deserve to be cherished and to be loved. Things that actually establish that children feel very important. And so you can look and see some kids, you could walk in the school and you can go, that kid's vulnerable. That kid's vulnerable. And the predators notice that right off the bat. They see the kids that are vulnerable,
That's right.
And so one of the more important things is parents that are going to actually make your work on helping your kid establish a good, healthy view of themselves and confidence, and do whatever necessary to help them get that, even if they're not exposed to porn at this moment, to kind of, so that they have a more secure way of walking out life. So, because it's not about what you're trying to stop, it's what you're trying to become. So the more we feed the healthy in a child, the more likely they will just walk right past it. They won't stay.
Right. And to continually tell them that they're loved, that they're cherished, that they're worthwhile, that they have dignity, and that these other things may be coming at them, whether it's pornography or someone approaching them that's a predator or a trafficker. We know that there's this cycle of abuse, right? And kids are getting groomed online all the time. I'm not even touching that topic really in this conversation, but building this healthy self-image and that atmosphere of trust for the parent to be able to do that and help them understand that it's not just the content, it's the people. There are dangerous people out there who want to use you, who want to take advantage of you, and who will hurt you. And that you can meet them online. They may seem like the nicest person in the world, but they have an agenda, and that is to sexually exploit you. If in fact they are a predator or a trafficker. This is a huge thing. So I think, everything you're saying is just so important there. And I just want to talk a little bit about parent modeling. I hear this a lot from dads, how important it is for a father to show genuine respect and love for the mom, and to treat her with respect and dignity, and to treat the daughter the same way. I've heard lots of dads talk about they start taking their preteen daughters out on dates. Say, this is the way a boy needs to treat you. And if they don't, you let me know, because it's inappropriate, because you are a treasure and I love you. And I've talked to boys too who have gotten caught in the trap of this, and they all said the same thing. They said, I just wish I could have gone to my parents, but I was afraid. I was afraid they'd blame me, they'd shame me, and I felt so horrible. But if I could have just talked to them, maybe this would have stopped and I would have gotten help earlier. So we're going to just come here to the prevention part, which is an area that Enough is Enough is so focused on. because we realize that, yes, a lot of the laws are not being enforced, like the obscenity laws, the child porn laws, which we now call child sex abuse material laws. Those are being enforced. The law enforcement is really busy fighting trafficking and child exploitation and other areas. But really, when it comes down to protecting your child's innocence, it's up to the parent. Parents are the first line of defense. So here's the cliff notes, if you will, of what I call Internet Safety 101, and for parents to implement safety rules and software tools. These are not rules and tools for your child. These are rules and tools for the parent to follow. The safety rules for the parent, we've got a whole list. We're going to put it up on the screen for you. But basically, these are the non-technical ways that you can protect your kids. Those regular conversations, being that safe adult, having an open dialogue on a regular basis, knowing who their friends are, asking questions. That's in that rule category. And there's more that I haven't covered. But then on the tool side, sometimes parents shy away from all these devices and all this technology, but there are parental control tools. And I wish they were a little easier sometimes, because they're tools on the smartphones, they're tools on the laptops, they're tools on the gaming devices. And even now, some of the social media companies are implementing what we call parental control tools. So I'm going to talk about 3 that are really, really important. One is filtering. Turning on those filters. They are very good at blocking out any type of content that you don't want your child to have. So parent, you can go and you can check boxes. You can check pornography. You can check lingerie if you want to. You can check hate speech. You can check bomb making. You can check illegal drugs. You can check all these things that these filters will then filter out, so that your kids are not getting, or at least that content's being filtered out, so your kids are getting the good content and not the negative. And they're very effective. They're not 100%. That's why you need those rules in place. The other tool that's so important is the monitoring tool. That tool, when you just turn it on, all right, I say turn everything on to the strictest setting, but turn it on. That will allow you to see where your kids are trying to go. Are they trying to get around a filter? Are they going to that site that you said no? Are they trying to get on to Instagram, even though you said no? You can't use Instagram until you're 14 or 15 or whatever the age is that you decide. I believe, wait till after 8th grade, but I'm very conservative because I see all the negative stuff that's happening to these kids, especially on social networking and gaming platforms. And then the third is time limiting tools. Yes, if you've got 5 kids, you can set time limits for each child. Mm-hmm. And that is a wonderful asset for a parent. So I would just want to encourage you, don't be afraid of the tools. They're there to help you. Are they a silver bullet? No, they're not. That's why that relationship and those conversations in that rule category, you've got to be doing both. They're kind of the yin and the yang. One doesn't work without the other. So, Gene, would you like to add to what I just...
We could talk all day about that, actually.
Yeah.
But one really simple one is you have your computer in an open area, not in a closed setting. So they literally, when they're online, it's in the open. They're not hiding anything. They're not in their room somewhere and isolated. Another one is you don't let them take the phones to bed. The phones stay out being charged in the counter at night, so they don't get to use their phone. That's usually when all the negative stuff happens, when the door is closed and they have secrecy and all that, privacy. And so, having those kind of scenarios, and key, now, I mean, there's a ton more we could go into, but the key in this is you always want to be able to use those tools as a tool to have conversation. And it's never, if you're only looking for punitive measures when they fail at something, then you're really messing up as a parent, because the truth is you want to see when they cross those lines somehow, that you use that as a warning sign to have a conversation and or have many conversations. And so I would say, instead of looking at it having one conversation that we're going to have this big talk, that you would see it in you would see it many conversations in bite sizes, so that kids don't shut down and shut out and close off, but to do it in little bites. It's it's a part of the journey of making sure you're aware of what's going on in your kid's life. And unfortunately, and I say this with all respect, many parents are not connected to their kids at all, except for at dinner time, or if they're even at that, and getting them in bed or making sure they're up for school. They don't have much touch with their kids. And so the input that kids are getting is from television, the music, their friends, the internet, and that's their education, that's their interaction.
Even if they're not connected yet at a young age, and I don't recommend any child be connected to the internet before they're at least in middle school. If not a little later. Okay, they can still use phones that are not internet connected. They can use a computer and computer games without being on YouTube, right? There's a lot that they can do without actually being connected to the internet. But anytime they're using technology at the youngest of ages, teach them this is not a toy. I hope you can see my phone. This is a tool.
Right.
You don't want them to have this safety of they're hiding behind a toy, because this seems very safe and sanitary. No. And then when they start getting used to the internet, this is connecting you to all the good that's out there and all the opportunities, but also all the bad and all the dangerous people. And there are criminals using this tool that can get to you. So it is my job as your parent to make sure you're using this tool in a safe way, and that we together, by having open conversations, are protecting you from what is bad out there in this metaverse, so to speak.
Yeah.
So Gene, thank you for being with us. Can you tell us how people can learn more about you and how to get the resources that you offer? Do you have a website?
Sure. I have a website. It's authenticrelationshipsint.com. And they can find everything they need there. If they want to talk to us, they can send us a message through that website.
Thank you again for your time. And I just want to thank everyone for listening, for watching. Please go to our website at internetsafety101.org. If you haven't already, sign up for our free newsletters and blast. We're putting information out there all the time to help you understand what the issues are online, whether it's legislative or law enforcement, or what is big tech doing and what is Mark Zuckerberg up to now, and that kind of thing, to just the basic tips. So we're here to help you. So please go there. And we also have information about how to protect your kids from all the other dangers and risks online, including cyberbullying, risk associated with online gaming, social media, and mobile technology. It's all there for you. So please, go there. We're here to help you. Reach out, and we just thank you. Encourage you to be the first line of defense, because you can do it. I know it sounds really overwhelming, but it's possible and it's doable, and we're here to help. So thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Internet Safety with Donna Rice Hughes, designed to educate, equip, and empower you to keep your children and family safe in the digital world. Until we talk again, have a beautiful and safe week.